Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, Don't Want Backups? Okay then. So I'm by no means an expert at network engineering, but I am an engineer who works on networks for very large oil and gas plants. Well, a friend works at a small company and they asked me to help with getting their data accessible via the internet. Because it's a close friend, I said sure and called the owner to talk specifics. Come to find out they have exactly one hard drive that gets passed around to store all company data on. I told him that was insane and he needs redundant backups both here and at a third-party site in case a fire destroyed everything. I gave the cheapest option I could, that was basically just to buy 2 NAS systems off Amazon, and the drives for them would have cost maybe $500. He would keep one at office and one at his house. I could set them up to auto backup, plus the employees could have an online shared drive that they could dump files into over the internet. He immediately said that $500 was way more than he could afford for this type of thing and just told me to get the current drive online. I repeatedly told him this is the worst possible thing you can do, but he didn't care. So I just plugged the drive into their router and set up the computers to be able to access it. I sent a CYA email to him and never looked back. So that was about a year ago, and now my friend sends me a series of frantic texts saying they lost the drive and if I know how to recover data from a formatted drive. I say no, but there are companies that can, but it might be expensive. For whatever reason they called an actual IT company out to do something and he accidentally formatted their OneDrive and lost everything from the past 15+ years. Now the owner is furious with me, and since I don't work for him nor do I have an IT company, I just said I told you so and hung up. Next one is titled, Sue Me? Okay, I will. My nephew bought a car transmission on the well-known auction site. A few days later he received a crate. He opened it and it was full of junk parts, just some old brake rotors and junk to have the crate weight what the transmission would have weighed. Of course he contacted the seller and they claimed they sent a transmission and refused to do anything. My nephew got a bit heated and an argument ensued, and the seller finally told him if he didn't like it, sue him. Now the good part, said nephew's older brother just happens to be an attorney, pretty convenient. Nephew calls brother, explains the situation, and the brother says he will look into it. Comes to find out the seller was out of state, the selling price was large enough to be a felony, plus with the shipper selling over state lines it turns into an interstate commerce violation, which is a federal offense. He sent the seller a typical lawyer letter full of legalese, but pointing out the issue of a possible felony and the interstate commerce violation. My nephew had the money back in a few days, and of course no charge from the family attorney. Next one is titled, Dad treats me like the least important person in the office, so I only let him know about something critical once instead of hounding him to get it done. My dad is a CPA, a total boomer, an awful boomer. He was exempted from serving in Vietnam for medical reasons, rare bone disease, and has zero sympathy for Vietnam vets who haven't gotten their crap together already. He thinks mental illnesses, including PTSD, are made-up ways for doctors to give you drugs, and anyone who succumbs is weak. For example, I have bipolar, and anyone who knows anything about it knows that I should take my meds as prescribed for the rest of my life. To him, that means I chose drugs, am no better than a heroin addict, and deserve no respect. His office and mind are absolutely chaotic. Things are lost, shuffled under stuff. Where's that file? Was one of the most common questions asked by any staff. Dad would have the whole office stop to look for an important file for a coworker who swears she gave it to him, but he has no recollection of that happening. Guess where I find the file? On his desk, over by his adding machine, under a mountain of church charity brochures he'd just ordered. His email, wow. If I told you he, at any given time, had over 3,000 unread emails, would that surprise you? Most of them were spam or 100 days of prayer stuff, but there were important emails going unchecked. Especially anything I sent him, because nothing about me was important enough to even warrant a glance. The worst part of him making me feel useless was the fact that I was the only one who would notice something like "we're running out of stationery" and try to order some, only to be told to wait, and have to bring it up multiple times until we're down to our last 2 pieces and the cheapskate is photocopying our stationery because no one will notice or care. From office supplies, to maintaining our ability to e-file, to arranging everyone's continuing education for the year, always done December 28th to 30 in a panic, calling vendors to keep our equipment running, cranking out tax returns he should have done already while the clients wait in the lobby to pick it up. I was never fast enough, to consoling or counseling co-workers on how to approach him regarding new software installation. Yes, there are people in their 20s to 40s who don't know how to install a disk, or open a file, and click run. I was running myself ragged for the good of his company, but anything I had to say was immediately disregarded. Sorry about the previous run-on sentence. Don't know how to structure it better and still give an idea of how broad my responsibilities were because no one else gave a damn. One thing he was a stickler about: saving copies of everything. For example, in 2009 the IRS demanded a copy of a customer's certain payroll tax form they claimed not to have received from 1996. We hadn't even prepared the damn thing, but we had a copy. The paper got to be too much and the filing cabinets in the attic were creating cracks in the ceiling. We went paperless, and our extremely competent IT guy set us up 3 backup systems. Since we by then had 2 offices, he had 2 1TB hard drives that every 2 seconds exchanged data, so if a tornado blew away a whole building, we'd still have everything from both buildings in the other building. Another backup was kept in the cloud and another on a server in a state across the country. One day, I had been yelled at once again until I started to cry, then was berated because of all the drugs I'm doing because he certainly didn't do anything to make me that emotional. Either go home and cry or shut up and do your job. And if he had to remind me of something, it was because I was on drugs and not because he gave me 27 things to do standing in my office while I was clearly eating, on my lunch break. On January 5th one year, I got an email from our IT guy, who had CC'd Dad but knew to include me, that our 1TB backups had enough space to last maybe 2 days, and that he could upgrade us in time to prevent disaster. I called over to Dad, our offices were adjacent, and our voices carry. That IT guy sent a really important email. Dad replies, "Aha," in a way that tells me he's not paying a bit of attention to what I was saying. So I forwarded my email to him and changed the subject to "urgent important pending disaster" and gave him no further reminders after that. Not my job. I was supposed to shut up, remember? So he didn't read either email. Even with my subject line, my email didn't strike him as one he should read. On January 8th, things get bad. We lost everything. Our IT guy dropped everything and got everything up to December 27th from the cloud backup. The server in the other state said it would cost us $7,000 rush fee and 3 weeks to fully restore everything the way it was. Well, W-2s and numerous payroll reports, sales tax filings, and other government deadlines occur in January. So we didn't have 3 weeks. My co-workers had to redo or reconstruct everything they'd done from December 27th to January 8th, which was a lot. Anything we had completed, scanned, and shredded was gone. A major audit was underway, and several crucial spreadsheets had disappeared. The worker that had prepared them did so on his last 2 days before moving to another firm, December 26th and 27th. All in all, our IT guy was paid about $12,000 to spend 3 14 to 16-hour days. One was his Sabbath, rescuing what he could, over $10,000 in overtime pay. And we still had missing stuff. This was concerning to clients affected because to them, data loss means data breach. Nobody would ever hack into our system because our IT guy would consider it a personal failure if we were successfully hacked. Our data was safe from everyone but Dad. Dad never suspected me of anything. Had I pointed out that I had reminded him only once, since he thought I should only have to be told something once, he would have berated me for sabotaging the firm. While he wouldn't listen to me, it was my job to make sure he did his job. Don't think so. Eventually the harassment became too much and I had a nervous breakdown and quit. I do food delivery for a living because something in me is broken, and I don't think I could hold down a real job anymore. My mental health has vastly improved since I left that place, and I maintain my credential and offer free random tax advice on Reddit to stay sharp. And before all the comments start about what a disaster of a CPA office this must be, they are all like that. The coworker who quit in December came back to us the next year, and said that even with $10,000 CRM software supposedly tracking workflow at the third largest firm in our state, where's the so-and-so file? Was the #1 question on a daily basis, and they spent as much time looking for stuff as they did doing actual work. Every worker we've had with previous experience working for another CPA agreed, files got lost all the time. Next one is titled, You Might Like to Back Up That Decision. Years ago, I was the CTO of a software company that was perhaps the worst run company I've ever seen. It was run by a chairman who used to be a flight engineer, and who had no experience at all in the software industry. One day, in his expansive wisdom, Mr. Chairman decided that we were going to give his friend, a local pastor, an office. I was ordered by Mr. Chairman to make it impossible for anybody, even you, to access any of Mr. Pastor's files, because, you know, privacy and stuff. I attempted to point out a couple of problems with that scenario, but was immediately shut down and ordered to do what I was told. Now, this particular person had, well, let's call it a quirk. When anything went wrong with his computer, his solution was to format his C drive. Yeah, I know. The inevitable happened, and Mr. Chairman ordered me to restore all of Mr. Pastor's files from the backup, which we normally did, religiously. I looked at him innocently and said, "What backup?" It took possibly 5 seconds for steam to begin pouring from his ears, and for him to start screaming, "You mean you didn't do a backup? Why you?" and so on. I waited for him to finish, and then asked him politely how he proposed that I do a backup of files that I'm not allowed to have any access to. The silence that followed was glorious. Next one is titled, I Read the Book. Last fall I took what I thought would be a decent and fulfilling job at a small local store affiliated with a local nonprofit. I had filled in there when it had just opened and liked connecting with my local community. There was talk of trying to hold community events and of fundraising, both of which I have experience doing. So I took the job. Turns out the store is wildly mismanaged by the people who own it. Hardly any of the people who used to come in all the time are ever here now. And we're open 11 hours a day. The store is tiny, and with no traffic, the small list of daily upkeep takes up maybe 2 hours of that time. Early on I brought a book and a set of colored pencils into work. I'd clean up after anyone who came in, do all of the daily tasks, and read or draw to fill the remaining 8 hours. I left them overnight one night because I was working the next day. My boss was in during the night for some paperwork and saw my things. I got a talking to about how we're paying you to work, and if I wanted to read a book, that's fine as long as it was something that makes the store better. So I did. I borrowed several books on retail from the library and read them on my Kindle, and came up with a list of suggestions to cut overhead and bring people into the store. Trimming hours, stocking more consistently, the owners just get what seems like it will sell with no rhyme or reason, avoiding seasonal merchandise, planning actual seasonal campaigns. I wrote all of this down in a bulleted list and went through it with my boss item by item. I even found articles online to support, so she didn't have to read the book herself. Magically, nobody cares what I do during the day anymore as long as the store is clean and the phone is answered. Next one is titled, Make Sure I Have Gloves? Okay boss. I am a prep cook and I work 5 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. in a nursing home. We have gone through several dietary directors recently. Note, a dietary director is basically the manager of the kitchen that also deals with any problems coming from around the building. Our current director is someone in from corporate, filling in for our previous director who walked out a few weeks back. This particular story takes place on what seemed to be an uneventful early morning. Breakfast tray line was completed and there were a few calls from the nurses' stations, but nothing out of the ordinary. I took my 15-minute breakfast and started getting organized for dish room. My position is dry side. I take the dishes off of the racks that come out of the dish machine and I put the dishes away and return the racks to the person that's washing. This is generally considered the busiest position in dish room. On this day, everything was running smoothly. Dishes were coming through the machine and I was putting them away. The dish machine jammed once, but it was quickly resolved without damaging any dishes or losing much time. I had put on a pair of gloves to jam the dish machine, because the soap it uses causes my skin to break out if I'm not wearing gloves. My director notices that I put on gloves to jam the dish machine, and then took my gloves off and continued unloading dishes from dry side. She came over to dish room and told me I had to have gloves. I pointed out that nobody else wears gloves on dry side and that this was never an issue before. I did not tell her that I had seen her doing dry side without gloves a few days back. I was, of course, rather upset when she did not back down. She told me I need to have gloves when I'm on dry side. She didn't say I had to be wearing them. I took a pair of clean gloves and put them in my shirt pocket, leaving them hanging out a bit for everyone to see. I told the person washing why I had gloves hanging out, and dish room stopped for a second while everyone had a good laugh. My director inevitably notices my gloves about 20 minutes later and makes a fuss. I told her that I had gloves, as per her instruction. She did not like this and told me to put on some gloves. Inevitably, my gloves tore almost right away. The steam from the dish machine is too much for these little see-through rubber gloves. There were openings between each finger and on the insides of my knuckles. I continued like this for the rest of dish room, about 25 more minutes. A few small pieces of glove ended up on some of the dishes, and I left them there for the director to find later. I then finished cleaning up dry side and went over to the prep counter and was putting cookies on plates and wrapping them. My manager gets on me for my attitude during dish room and I respond that I did wear gloves, as per her instruction. I didn't do anything here because I was already so done with her. There was no major fallout from this. This is one of many incidents where our director comes up with bullcrap rules on the spot, and upper management has gotten so tired of this that they don't bother anymore. This continued behavior from all of our directors has created an us versus them environment in the kitchen. The whole facility is quickly becoming very toxic and I'm looking for another job. When I get it, the place I work for now is going to be very screwed. I feel bad for the residents who pay out the butt to live there, but I can't take it anymore. We'll update with details when I get a new job. Next one is titled, "Can I get your badge number again?" I don't have much wiggle room in my job. Every word is recorded, there is a million policies, as is the world in public safety. I'm not allowed to even sigh audibly on the phone when something absurd is happening, so I had to get creative with this one girl. Without going into too much detail, I often get alarm companies calling in reporting a burglary alarm or medical, fire alarm, etc. One of the alarm companies that calls us all the time, as it's the most well-known in the country, requires their employees to obtain badge numbers for who they report the alarm to. Well, I've spoken to Sydney plenty of times. I recognize her name and her voice right away, but mostly I recognize her because she immediately speaks over my initial phone greeting. Here is my greeting verbatim. "Hi, City Communications, this is badge number XX, how may I help you?" Great, simple, quick. Well, Sydney lets me get a few words out before she screams over me with her greeting, not letting my recorded greeting finish. So I take the call, get all the information I need from her, and when I conclude the call she asks me for my badge number again. 100% of the time she does this. Since every second of this job is recorded and I sit right 5 feet away from my supervisors, I've found the best remedy to Sydney's absurd behavior is to just get all of my information from her and then promptly give her a thank you goodbye. Click. I've done nothing wrong, got all of my info and there's no recording of me doing anything wrong. It may not catch up to her immediately, but when she tries listening back to the recording she has for my badge number and just hears her shitty voice yelling anxiously over me, I will have my moment of peace. Really, wish I could just tell her she's being immature. But I can't, so this'll do. Last one is titled, "Stupid Lady Was Talking Out Her Butt." At the time I was about 19, currently 23, and I had been down on my luck, and I was homeless. One day I was walking with a friend and this lady just pulled up and asked if I did construction. Obviously I said yes, I've been working with my dad since about 5. So flash forward about 4 days and I show up at her house. Honestly, there's a lot I could go into, but none so much as her wanting me to mud a room. I told her that I could go with her to get the stuff. She said no, so I gave her a very specific list: a 6 and 10-inch putty knife, paper tape, mud, etc. Well, the tape she got me was this kind with holes in it to make it easier to use, and I told her it was the wrong kind and she refused to listen, saying, "It's my house and my money, so if I tell you to use it then you need to use it." Me, "But it does." Her, "I don't care, just do your ducking job." Me, thinks for a moment, "Sorry, yes ma'am." So I did the room, and finished the stuff she wanted me to, then I went on with my life. About 6 months later she called me wanting me to come and see if I can do some repairs on something. She was being foggy on the details and I had a feeling. Yep, I got there and she took me to the room. The tape had started to fall, which is what I had tried to warn her would happen. I told her I'd fix it for $600. For reference, she paid me $8 an hour to do it the first time and it only took like 2 hours. She basically told me that she wouldn't pay that much, but she called me the next day so I could do it. I assume she tried to get someone else and quickly realized I was the cheapest around. It was a very small victory, but I was glad because prior to that she had verbally and mentally abused me, insulted me, treated me like I was beneath her, and flat out told that she thought my late brother, who was like a father to me, and she had never met, deserved to die. And all because I was homeless and too poor to quit. Thanks for listening.